They say your land is your sanctuary, but that morning, mine had become someone else's wedding venue. I woke up to the sound of laughter, soft classical music drifting through the air, and the unmistakable scent of fresh-cut flowers. It hit me like a freight train, because I sure as hell hadn't planned any party. Still half asleep, I rubbed my eyes and glanced out the window. What I saw made my blood run cold. My ranch, Walker Ranch, the land my family had worked for generations, had somehow been transformed overnight. Rows of pristine white chairs lined my front lawn, perfectly arranged, leading up to a massive floral arch. A catering station, complete with chefs dressed in spotless white uniforms, was set up right next to my barn, the same barn where my livestock had spent the night. Across the yard, a string quartet played Beethoven like they were performing at Carnegie Hall. And standing dead center, barking orders like she was royalty, was none other than Karen Whitmore, president of the Willow Ridge HOA and the bane of my existence. The woman had made it her life's mission to treat my land like her personal playground, even though I wasn't part of her damn HOA. I stormed out, boots crunching against the gravel, my heart pounding hard enough to echo in my ears. This had to be a mistake. Maybe they got the wrong property? Maybe some wedding planner screwed up the address. But then, I saw it, a massive white banner flapping in the breeze. Welcome to the wedding of Emily Reynolds and Brandon Whitmore. I froze. I didn't recognize those names, not a single one. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This was entitlement, HOA style. Karen spun around just as I reached the first row of chairs. Her face lit up with that fake, sugary smile she'd perfected over the years. "Oh, good morning, Jordan," she chirped, waving a clipboard like she was the benevolent host of some charity gala. "Isn't it just gorgeous? The community's going to love this." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Karen, what the hell is this?" She let out a light, airy laugh that made my fist clench. "Don't be so dramatic. It's just a small wedding. We needed the perfect outdoor venue, and honestly, your ranch was the best option. You should feel honored. The bride's family is very prestigious." My jaw tightened. "Karen, this is my land. You can't just set up a damn wedding here without asking." Karen rolled her eyes like I was a petulant child. "Don't be silly. It's for the community. Besides, we tried calling, but you never answered." "That's because you never called," I snapped. Before I could say more, the bride and groom, both looking smug, strolled over. Emily Reynolds, blonde hair perfectly styled, smiled wide. "Oh, you must be Jordan. Thank you so much for letting us use your land. It's breathtaking." I gritted my teeth. "I didn't let you use anything. Karen set this up without asking." Then Brandon, Karen's nephew, laughed. "Come on, man. No harm, no foul, right? It's just one day." But it wasn't just a day, it was my land. And the line had just been crossed. Jordan stood by the buffet table, chewing on a shrimp skewer as the chaos began, exactly as he'd planned. One of the caterers near the barn froze, his eyes wide as he pointed toward the open back gate. Before anyone could react, a deep, rumbling moo echoed across the yard, followed by the thunderous sound of hooves pounding against the grass. Jordan smirked. Showtime. Out of the gate burst a wave of cows, their massive bodies moving faster than anyone thought possible. Some lazily chewed on hay, but others charged forward, wild with excitement at their newfound freedom. At the head of the pack was Diesel, Jordan's most temperamental bull, eyes locked on the towering wedding cake like it was his sole purpose in life. The first scream came from an elderly guest, but it was quickly drowned out by the rising chorus of panic. Cows barreled through the seating area, toppling the white chairs with ease. Beautiful floral arrangements, no doubt worth thousands, went flying through the air like confetti. Diesel didn't stop until he reached the cake. With one mighty swing of his head, he smashed the entire masterpiece into a mound of crushed layers and frosting. Emily Reynolds let out a blood-curdling scream as she watched her dream cake obliterated. Brandon Whitmore, dressed in an overpriced white suit, leapt back just in time. But not before a wave of dirt and grass from Diesel's hooves splattered his once pristine pants. Karen's face twisted, shock, horror, and then pure rage as she spun toward Jordan. "What did you do?" she shrieked. Jordan calmly wiped his mouth with a napkin and tossed the skewer into the frosting-covered mess Diesel had left behind. Huh, looks like my cows weren't invited. Guess they figured they'd crash the party. Karen stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. She turned back to the scene unfolding around her, guests screaming, some climbing onto chairs to escape the stampede, while others scrambled for cover. One unlucky man stepped directly into a steaming pile of manure, his expensive leather shoes ruined. And then, just when it seemed it couldn't get worse, the goats came. Smaller, faster, and infinitely more mischievous, they darted through the chaos with wild enthusiasm. One leapt onto the gift table, sending boxes and envelopes flying. Another climbed the DJ's sound system, its tiny hooves stomping all over the controls. The sweet sound of classical music warped into a horrifying screech. But the final blow came with Sergeant Honkers, Jordan's massive white goose and self-declared king of the ranch. With a loud, aggressive honk, he spread his wings and charged straight for the groom. Brandon yelped, stumbling back as Sergeant Honkers nipped at his leg, flapping wildly like he was claiming his territory. Emily sobbed, desperately trying to pull the goose away, only making the bird angrier. Jordan leaned casually against the table, watching it all like a reality show. Karen was trembling now, red-faced and furious. "You did this on purpose! Call them off!" she screamed. Jordan shrugged. "They live here. You're the ones trespassing." The scene was full-blown chaos. Bridesmaids hid behind the catering table as a goat chewed on the hems of their dresses. An older gentleman, shaking, waved a napkin at Sergeant Honkers in a desperate attempt to defend himself. Emily collapsed in tears. "My wedding is ruined!" Brandon, feathers stuck to his suit, finally snapped. "Who the hell throws a wedding on someone else's property without asking?" Jordan grinned. "Great question." Karen, desperate, had screamed, "I'm calling the police!" Jordan clapped his hands. "Oh, please do. I'd love to hear what they say about an illegal wedding on private property." Karen froze, realizing she'd just cornered herself. Guests ran for their cars, Emily sobbed over her ruined bouquet, and Brandon glared daggers at Karen. "This was your idea," he spat. "You told us it was taken care of." Karen had no answer. She was done. The once grand wedding was now a circus of farm animals, ruined decorations, and shattered reputations. Jordan stretched, grinning wide. Best wedding ever. The once extravagant wedding setup now resembled a war zone. White chairs lay overturned across the field, trampled floral arrangements were ground into the dirt, and half-eaten food was scattered like battlefield rations. The cows, still lazily grazing, chewed on whatever caught their curiosity. Remnants of silk ribbons, bits of the ruined wedding arch, or even a designer handbag someone had dropped in the chaos. Emily Reynolds sat on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably into the shredded remains of her veil. Her once perfect makeup streamed down her face in black streaks. Brandon Whitmore paced back and forth, cursing under his breath, his $1,000 suit covered in dirt, feathers, and frosting. Some guests tried to flee toward their cars, while others stood frozen in shock, staring at the destruction like survivors of a natural disaster. Jordan leaned casually against a fence post, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with quiet satisfaction. Across the lawn, Karen Whitmore stood pale and trembling, desperately trying to form words, but nothing came out. The Willow Ridge HOA board members had gathered around her, some whispering furiously, others glaring openly, fully realizing the extent of her colossal mistake. The first voice to break the silence came sharp and furious from Thomas Reynolds, Emily's father. His face was red, his chest heaving with rage. "Karen, you told us everything was handled. You said this was a legitimate venue, that the owner approved it." Karen's lips trembled as she struggled to regain control. "Well, it was supposed to be. I mean, Jordan wasn't using the land for anything important, so I thought." Thomas took a menacing step forward. "You thought?" His voice rose, making several guests flinch. "Do you have any idea how much this wedding cost me? We paid the HOA thousands of dollars. And now, look at this." He swept his arm across the devastation. One of the cows casually chewed on the shredded wedding arch, while another pawed through the gift table, scattering envelopes across the dirt. Nearby, a goat still stood triumphantly atop the busted sound system, chewing the corner of a speaker like it was hay. Karen's eyes darted desperately for someone to blame. Her gaze landed on Jordan, and her expression twisted with hatred. "This is your fault," she shrieked. "You let your animals loose on purpose. You sabotaged this wedding." Jordan arched an eyebrow, completely unfazed. "Yeah? And who gave you permission to throw a wedding on my land, Karen?" The HOA board shifted uncomfortably. Several members began backing away, not wanting any part of this. Finally, an older woman with large glasses cleared her throat. "Karen, you told us Jordan agreed. That's the only reason we signed off on this." Jordan let out a cold laugh. "Signed off? You people don't get to approve anything on my property. I'm not part of the HOA, remember?" Karen's face went slack, her carefully crafted world crumbling around her. Emily wiped her tear-streaked face and glared daggers at Karen. "You lied to us. You lied to everyone." Brandon, brushing hay off his shoulders, groaned. "We're getting our money back. Every damn penny." Karen gave a brittle, high-pitched laugh. "We'll have to discuss that with the HOA Treasury Department." Thomas Reynolds stepped forward again, his face darkening. "You mean the Treasury Department you control?" Karen's eyes widened in panic, realizing just how deep she was in. The murmurs grew louder. Someone whispered about financial misconduct, another about calling a vote to remove Karen from power. It was getting ugly. And then, sirens. 2 police cruisers pulled up, lights flashing. Karen's face lit up in relief as she spun around. "Oh, thank God! Officers, arrest him!" She pointed at Jordan. "He set those animals loose." The officers scanned the scene, ruined decorations, terrified guests, livestock everywhere. One officer adjusted his hat. "Whose property is this?" Jordan raised his hand. "Mine." The officer nodded. "And you didn't authorize this event?" "Nope." Karen screeched. "He's lying." The officer ignored her. "And who took payment for this disaster?" Jordan pointed toward the Reynolds family. "They paid Karen directly." Thomas Reynolds pulled out his phone. "We have the receipts." The officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you charged money for an event on land you don't own?" Karen paled. The officer sighed. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning." The crowd gasped. Karen's eyes widened in horror. What? No, I didn't do anything wrong." Jordan smirked. "Tell it to the judge." As the officers led a shrieking Karen toward the patrol car, Emily gave Jordan a sad, apologetic glance. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." Jordan nodded. "Next time, check who owns the land." And just like that, it was over. As the last car pulled out of Walker Ranch and the sound of sirens faded into the distance, Jordan Walker stretched his arms, letting out a satisfied sigh. Sergeant Honkers, his proud white goose, strutted past him like a decorated war hero, fluffing his feathers. Jordan chuckled and gave the bird a solid pat on the back. "Good work, soldier." With the chaos behind him, Jordan turned toward the house, already wondering what ridiculous scheme the Willow Ridge HOA might try next. Whatever it was, he'd be ready. The next morning, Jordan woke up expecting peace and quiet, but the universe clearly had other plans. His phone buzzed relentlessly on the nightstand. When he finally answered, Tommy's voice came through, half amused, half exasperated. "Boss, you might want to check your front yard. You've got visitors," Jordan groaned, throwing off his blanket and dragging himself out of bed. After yesterday's spectacular humiliation, he'd hoped Karen Whitmore would finally crawl back into whatever HOA hole she came from. Apparently, he'd underestimated just how deep Karen's delusion ran. When he stepped outside, the sight made his blood boil. Parked near his fence was a city vehicle, official-looking and out of place. 2 men in button-up shirts and slacks stood beside it, clipboards in hand, surveying his land like they were ready to declare war. And there, waving a thick folder of documents and gesturing wildly, was Karen. Jordan adjusted his hat and made his way over. "Morning, gentlemen. Something I can help you with?" One of the men turned, giving Jordan a polite but firm nod. "Mr. Walker, we've received multiple complaints regarding violations on your property. We're here to conduct an inspection." Well, Jordan barely kept from rolling his eyes. "Complaints? From who?" The second man cleared his throat and glanced awkwardly at Karen. She pasted on her best concerned citizen face. "From several members of the Homeowners Association," she cooed sweetly, like she hadn't been arrested yesterday. "You see, your farm animals are causing disturbances. And, well, There are reports your land might be in violation of local zoning regulations. Jordan folded his arms across his chest. Zoning violations? That's interesting. I've owned this land for years and haven't had a single issue until now. Karen gave a dramatic sigh, clutching her folder like it was a holy book. It's not personal, Jordan. It's about protecting the community. After yesterday's unfortunate incident, residents are concerned about whether your land is properly regulated. Jordan let out a humorless chuckle. Let me get this straight. You stole my land for a wedding, got caught, got arrested, and now I'm the problem? Karen's face twitched, but she quickly recovered. It's not about the past, it's about moving forward. One of the inspectors cleared his throat. We just need to take a look around, Mr. Walker. If everything's in order, we'll be on our way. Jordan sighed but stepped aside. Be my guest. The inspectors walked the property, jotting down notes, occasionally glancing back at Karen. She trailed behind them like a smug shadow, pointing at the barn, the fencing, even the water troughs, as if expecting them to find some damning violation. But the longer the inspection dragged on, the more frustrated Karen became. Finally, the inspectors returned, flipping through their notes. Well, Mr. Walker, everything's in compliance. Your land is properly zoned for agricultural use. Your animals are well kept. There's no violation. Karen's fake smile faltered. But what about safety? That goose attacked a guest. Jordan grinned. You mean Sergeant Honkers? Yeah, he doesn't like trespassers. The inspectors exchanged a glance, unimpressed. Ma'am, farm animals on a farm are not a violation. Karen's face turned beet red. But the noise, the smell. The second inspector cut her off. Ma'am, everything here is legal. If there's nothing else, we'll be going. Jordan bit back a laugh as the inspectors packed up and drove off. Karen stood rooted, fists clenched. You think this is over, she hissed. Jordan leaned casually against the fence, grinning. I was hoping it was. Karen took a step forward, her eyes blazing. You humiliated me. Do you know how much money that wedding cost? What I lost because of you? Jordan raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, the HOA board's turning on you. Karen let out a bitter, humorless laugh. Of course they are. They're cowards. The moment it got tough, they abandoned me. Jordan shrugged. Maybe if you hadn't lied, stolen someone's property and tried to cover it up, they wouldn't have. Karen's jaw clenched so hard Jordan half expected her teeth to crack. You think you're untouchable, don't you? Jordan sighed. Karen, go home. But she didn't move. Instead, she took a slow, deep breath, like she was fighting back tears or rage. You'll regret this. I'll find a way to make you pay. Jordan's patience finally snapped. Karen, the only reason you're not in jail right now is because I didn't press charges for trespassing and fraud. So if I were you, I'd walk away and pray I stay generous. For the first time, Karen hesitated, fear flashing across her face. But with one final glare, she turned and stormed off, leaving a trail of dust in her wake. Jordan stared Karen Whitmore down, his voice calm but sharp as a knife. If I were you, Karen, I'd walk away and pray I keep feeling generous. For the first time since this mess began, Karen hesitated. A flicker of something crossed her eyes. Fear, maybe, or the dawning realization that she had truly lost. But pride wouldn't let her back down. Not yet. With a sharp turn of her heel, she stormed toward her luxury SUV, kicked up dust, and sped down the road, leaving Jordan standing there, exhaling slowly as he ran a hand through his hair. He knew Karen well enough to know this wasn't over. She was the type to sink her claws in until there was nothing left. But for now, she was out of moves. Not 2 minutes later, Jordan's phone buzzed. He glanced down, raising an eyebrow as he saw the sender, one of the Willow Ridge HOA board members. The message was short but satisfying. Emergency HOA meeting tonight. Karen's losing control. Thought you'd like to know. A slow smirk crept across Jordan's face. Things were about to get interesting. That evening, Jordan settled onto his porch, sipping a cold glass of sweet tea as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air was still, peaceful, a stark contrast to the insanity of the past 2 days. His animals settled in for the night, the soft sounds of the ranch returning to normal. For the first time in a while, he allowed himself to relax. But deep down, he knew it wasn't finished. Not yet. Karen Whitmore didn't know how to lose gracefully. Still, the thought of witnessing her downfall was too good to pass up. After a long moment of contemplation, Jordan sighed, set his glass down, and dusted off his jeans. It was time to see how far Karen's empire had crumbled. The Willow Ridge Community Clubhouse was already packed when Jordan arrived. He leaned casually against the doorway, arms crossed, taking in the scene. The air was thick with tension, so heavy you could have cut it with a knife. No polite smiles tonight, only glares, hushed arguments, and barely restrained anger. At the center of it all sat Karen, stiff as a board, her fingers gripping the chair arms like they were the only things holding her up. Her face was pale, lips pressed tight, but her eyes still burned with defiance. An older man with a bald head and sharp eyes finally stood, clearing his throat. All right, folks, let's get to the main issue. We all saw what happened at that wedding. We all know who's responsible. Karen straightened, forcing a brittle smile. Yes, and I think we need to discuss the real problem. Jordan Walker's complete disregard for community standards. His animals. The bald man cut her off with a raised hand. Karen, stop. We're not here to talk about Jordan. We're here to talk about you. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Karen's face twitched, but she fought to hold her composure. I don't understand. Everything I did was for the good of this community. A woman near the front scoffed. You stole money, Karen. You lied about the venue. You nearly got us all sued. That's not leadership. That's reckless. Karen's jaw clenched. I was building something bigger. Prestige, connections. Embarrassment, another voice cut in. That's what you brought us. And now, legal trouble. Jordan couldn't help the small chuckle that escaped him. Watching Karen's carefully built facade crumble was sweeter than he imagined. Another board member, a man with glasses who'd been silent until now, cleared his throat. There's been discussions about a vote. Karen stiffened. A vote? She echoed, her voice cracking. The bald man nodded solemnly. To remove you as HOA president. For the first time, real panic crossed Karen's face. She sat up straighter, shaking her head furiously. No, you can't do that. I built this HOA. I kept it running for years. And in those years, you fined people for ridiculous things, enforced unnecessary rules, and now you've cost us thousands with your arrogance. The woman shot back. Karen's knuckles turned white as she gripped the table. I've always acted in this community's best interest. Bitter laughter broke out from the back. The bald man sighed, rubbing his temples. Karen, let's not drag this out. We have the votes. No, you don't. Karen's voice was shrill now. The man with the glasses pulled out a stack of papers. We do. Karen's breathing grew shallow. You can't do this. I refuse to step down. The bald man exhaled. Karen, you don't have a choice. The vote is happening. Now. One by one, hands went up. Not a single one in Karen's favor. Even those who once defended her sat stone-faced, unwilling to ruin their own reputations any further. Karen's eyes darted desperately, searching for an ally, but there was none left. Her face went pale, the crushing reality sinking in. She had lost. Everything. Her power, her control, her precious HOA presidency. It was all gone. Jordan finally pushed off the doorway, smirking. Well, looks like the community finally figured out what was best. Karen turned to him, pure hatred blazing in her eyes. This is your fault. Jordan tilted his head. Oh, did I tell you to steal money? Trespass? Lie to everyone here? No, that was all you, Karen. Her lips trembled, but there was nothing left to say. The bald man cleared his throat one final time. Karen, you have 1 week to vacate your position. After that, we'll elect a new president. Karen shot to her feet, her chair screeching against the floor. Without another word, she stormed out of the clubhouse, slamming the door behind her. Jordan let out a low whistle. Well, that was fun. For the first time in years, the room let out a collective sigh of relief. It was like the community could breathe again. As Jordan turned to leave, the bald man called after him. Jordan, he paused, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, the man nodded. Thanks for everything. Jordan smirked. Don't thank me. Thank my cows." With that, he tipped his hat and walked off into the night, finally at peace. If there's one thing this whole ridiculous ordeal taught me, it's that entitlement, no matter how carefully disguised as community service or leadership, will always be exposed for what it truly is: selfishness in its most arrogant form. What Karen Whitmore did wasn't just a simple HOA overstep or a harmless misunderstanding. It was a calculated abuse of power driven by greed and an inflated sense of control. She truly believed that because she held a title, she had the right to trample over the rights of others, to use what wasn't hers and to profit from it. But life, especially in small towns like Pinehaven, has a way of humbling people like that. You see, there's a difference between leading a community and controlling it. Real leaders serve. They listen, they build trust, and they respect boundaries, literal and figurative. Karen never learned that, and it was her downfall. It's easy for people in positions of power to forget that titles don't make them invincible. HOA president, CEO, mayor, whatever the label, none of it means you own the people or the land you oversee. Karen saw herself as the Queen of Willow Ridge, ruling over everyone as if it were her birthright. But when you lead with ego instead of empathy, when you put personal gain over the well-being of the very community you're supposed to serve, it's only a matter of time before that house of cards comes crashing down. She learned too late that respect isn't something you demand or manipulate your way into. It's something you earn every single day by doing the right thing when no one's watching. One of the biggest lessons here is about boundaries, both literal property lines and personal ones. My land wasn't just dirt and grass. It was something I worked hard for, something that carried my family's blood, sweat, and memories. And for Karen to decide it was hers for the taking simply because she wanted it speaks volumes about the entitlement some people carry. In life, people will test your boundaries. They'll push, they'll poke, they'll try to convince you that your property, your time, even your peace of mind is up for grabs if it serves them. But the truth is, standing up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable, is necessary. Especially when dealing with folks like Karen, who mistake kindness and silence for weakness. There's also a powerful reminder here about accountability. Karen's mistake wasn't just stealing my land for a wedding. It was refusing to take responsibility even after she was caught red-handed. She lied, she shifted blame, she tried to weaponize community rules to cover her own selfish decisions. But at the end of the day, the truth always catches up. And the moment those HOA board members realized they had been used, that they were complicit in her scheme, everything unraveled. Watching that meeting unfold, seeing neighbors who had once cowered in her shadow finally find their voices, was proof that people will only be pushed so far before they snap. Sometimes it takes a disaster to wake folks up, to remind them that their silence enables abuse. But once they wake up, there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. Another takeaway? Nature's got a funny way of restoring balance. You could call it karma, divine justice, or just plain poetic timing. But when those cows, goats, and Sergeant Honkers the goose crashed that wedding, it wasn't just chaos. It was nature reclaiming what was rightfully hers. No fancy tent, no overpriced champagne, no amount of silk and flowers could stop what was coming. Because when you build something on a foundation of lies and theft, it doesn't matter how pretty the decorations are, the whole thing's doomed to collapse. And collapse it did. That wasn't just a ruined wedding. It was a symbol of everything Karen had built for herself, toppled by her own arrogance. For anyone out there who's ever felt powerless against someone like Karen, a boss, a neighbor, a so-called leader, let this be your reminder. You have more power than you think. The law is on your side, truth is on your side, and no matter how loud or entitled someone may be, they can't change the simple fact that right is right and wrong is wrong. I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to fight dirty. I just stood my ground, trusted the process, and let Karen dig her own grave. And when the dust settled, justice prevailed. She lost everything because she underestimated the very people she thought she controlled. Lastly, this story is about the importance of community. Not the kind of community Karen preached about, but the real one. The one where people stand up for each other, where folks admit when they've been wrong, and where wrongdoers face the consequences of their actions. When those HOA members finally turned on Karen, It wasn't just about money or the wedding. It was about reclaiming their voices, realizing that they deserved better leadership. Leadership rooted in fairness, respect, and service, not fear and manipulation. That's what every community deserves, whether it's a small town like Pine Haven or a big city HOA. So what's the moral of the story? Simple. Know your worth. Protect what's yours, and never let bullies, no matter how powerful they seem, go unchecked. Because one day when the dust settles and the cows have wandered back to the barn, the truth will stand tall. And those who built their kingdoms on lies, they'll have nothing left but the wreckage of their own making. And as for me, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling or fighting back. Sometimes it's standing there calm, watching karma do its thing, and knowing deep down you didn't just win, you earned it. If you enjoyed this story and love seeing entitled HOA Karens get exactly what they deserve, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more people who enjoy these crazy tales of justice served. Subscribe so you don't miss out on the next outrageous HOA story. We've got plenty more where that came from. And hey, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below. Have you ever dealt with a Karen like this? How did you handle it? Share your story with us. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when a new episode drops. And of course, share this video with your friends and family who would love to see a Karen get a taste of her own medicine. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.